Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Big League Breakdowns. My name is Tyler, and joining me today are John and Will as we discuss some imminent news that came in around the MLB today. We will be doing this periodically as news does come in and big stories break. If we don't have a podcast lined up necessarily in a good time frame. So today we are talking about the Zack Wheeler extension. As a Phillies fan, Will, I'll let you start it off because this is big news for them.
Oh, this is huge. This is like Christmas in the beginning of the year. I mean, sure, it comes in July, but for Philly right now, it's coming in March. It's kind of ironic because there was also the Jason Kelsey retiring
Yeah.
uh like a few hours later, so but that was kind of expected.
All
But
the
no,
money
the
came from
Wheelers
Philly.
Yeah.
but the Wheeler signing is exactly what the Phillies needed because I will admit part of me was worried that if they did not extend them before this season started, that they weren't gonna do it and he'd go in at all during the season. He'd go into the offseason, potentially get snatched up by someone else. But this just shows how much they love Wheeler, how much they believe he can lead their staff in the postseason. Um, and I'm thrilled for what the next 3 years hold in store for the Phillies and postseason runs.
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at a guy that, again, would have been a free agent after this year. They wanted to lock him up, and they do so. Also getting, $42 million dollars a year, unprecedented stuff as well for an extension. And look, Zack Wheeler is obviously full value for this. I think this is something that they definitely wanted to get done. And now if you're the Phillies, you get Nola and Wheeler done this offseason. I know spring training has started and stuff, but I mean, that's a win for them. And they can continue to move forward and try to build the pieces to get this World Series with everything they brought in. John, I'll go to you. Any thoughts on this Wheeler extension?
My thoughts are great. It's what the Phillies need to do. Keep their pitching staff together, their starting pitching, because elite pitching is hard to get in this league. It's hard to get in professional baseball. So keeping it together was definitely the right move by the Phillies. My question is this the piece that they were needing to get over that hump? You know, to get to the World Series and eventually win it.
Yeah, and I think this is an interesting topic too because we're also going to discuss Chapman going to the Giants, which we'll get into soon. But the Boris clients right now is Blake Snell, still a free agent as of right now. I think we talked about this on the last show where the Angels and Yankees were kind of the rumored two teams left, but then there was a report that came out yesterday, as we're recording March 4th, 2024, that the Phillies were looking to get him on a 1 year deal. And I took that at the time before the Wheeler extension came in as okay, they're trying to get, they don't know the future of Wheeler. They don't know if they can lock him up. They don't know how much money they're
I
going to
think that's
spend.
all that was.
Yeah. So look,
I think that's all that was. It was a contingency. Like, all right, Wheeler goes to, let's say, I don't know, the Astros. Like, this was
how
a
many
way
Astros?
to. I mean, I had to think of a big market team that could actually afford him.
Fair
It
enough.
was either that or the Dodgers, and I
Yeah.
think the Dodgers have spent enough money. Anyway, so in regards to in regards to that, that sounds more like a backup plan to me. That did not sound. That doesn't sound like a okay, this is what we were pursuing. We're definitely going after Snell because if the Phillies, with all the money that they have, based on their ability to spend money, um, based what they've shown with Nola and Harper and everybody, it if they were really going after Blake Snell, they would have gone after Blake Snell and would not have done a 1 year deal. That's plain to see. So I think that was just a backup plan that they luckily didn't have to you know put into fruition because I think Zach Wheeler's the better option.
And I don't know if I rule out them still trying to get Snell. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, maybe they're looking at the 1 year deal because look, he's still out there. He's a Cy Young winner from last year, and it's like okay, we can get our big three in the rotation, or our bigger three in the rotation, I guess.
Had to
And
keep up with the
yeah, I mean,
Joneses.
like you look at the. I hate to keep bringing it up. It's going to be a theme this year, but the Dodgers, like you look at their starting three now, and they still have people out, injured. I mean, you want
After
to bring that
last week's
in.
show, You know what I saw on TV all week? The Dodgers.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
I was
Otani.
sick of it.
Yeah,
I was like, oh my gosh, this is ridiculous. Because Otani had played his first spring training game, and I'm
Yep.
like, okay, I'm sick of this.
Well, here's what
Anyway,
I'm gonna. Well, no, here's what I'm gonna say about the Snell Montgomery situation, and I'm gonna tie it back into the Phillies' postseason last year, and part of what caused them to fall apart in the Diamondback series, because one of the big things entering the 2023, well, 20 before the 2023 off season started, so the 22-23 off season, the Phillies in the 22 postseason were doing basically a 3-man rotation of Wheeler, Nola, and Suarez, and then they were doing a bullpen game as their fourth game, and that was working. It was getting by. It wasn't like something they could really lean on, and it didn't help when the World Series came. So one of the hopes then in the offseason was, all right, let's bring in another guy that could be a starter for us in the postseason, and we actually have a rotation that we can stick behind for 4 games, which is why they brought on Taijuan Walker. However, one of the issues with the last postseason with the Phillies, and what irritated me a lot, especially when it came to Game 4 with the Diamondbacks, and I'm trying not to go too much on a tangent on that game because I have a lot of opinions about how that went and how that was handled. But the biggest problem with the 23 postseason was that it went and or was not managed any different than the 22. They had a 4-man rotation that could have been set, or at least prepared for going into the championship series, but Walker had not pitched the entire postseason, and the Phillies were worried that he was going to be too rusty, so they did not do any ramping up for him. They did basically a side bullpen session or simulated game between him and Christopher Sanchez to decide who's the least rusty. Chose Sanchez. He pitched not even 3 innings, like 2 2/3 or something in the game he was in, and he wasn't going to pitch more than that because of Thompson not wanting to push him or whatever. And so the Phillies ended up using a bullpen game there. Games 3, 4, and 5, every game in Arizona, their bullpen was depleted.
Yeah.
And so
Almost make it
basically,
sound
they
like
were
Rob
running
Thompson
on
was to blame.
fumes. I like Thompson a lot. I will say that I do think there was a lot of fault on his part for that game in particular. They should have still won either 6 or 7, and the offense collapsed there. And I'm not going to blame Thompson for the offense collapsing, but specifically Game 4, the Phillies were up 5-2 in that game, and they lost. And that could have had them going into the 5th game of the series with Wheeler back on the mound, being the game they could win, and that would send them to the World Series, and it didn't work out. So I wonder if the Phillies were thinking, or could be thinking, that if Montgomery or Snell are still on the market this offseason and now spring training, they could pick him up and have him be the third guy that they can rely on. So then you have a Wheeler, Nola, and Snell or Montgomery situation as your guaranteed 3 for the first couple rounds, because Ranger Suarez over the last 2 years has proven that he can be kind of a Swiss Army knife and used wherever you need him. In the 2022 postseason, he started some games, he was in the bullpen some games, he could jump back and forth perfectly. The year before that, when they didn't make the postseason in 21, he put up like unheard of numbers that year where he pitched over like 100 innings and had an ERA of like 1.5. And he started, he closed, he was in relief. He literally did everything for that team, which is why they used him the way they did in 2022. But in 2023, he was their third starter. Granted, he deserved it. He pitched really well, but he was the third guy. And I think the Phillies would be very, very well suited to enter the postseason this coming year if they can have someone like a Suarez be the 4th pitcher and not necessarily be the third starter, because I could easily see Thompson sticking Suarez in the first 2 series to get him like loose and keep him warm, and then in the championship series slip him in. He can pitch 5 innings for them, and maybe even go back into the bullpen in the last whatever games they need him to, and have him be a bullpen guy. So the Phillies, I think, are very much still a player in the Montgomery and Snell situation. Personally, I would go for Montgomery over Snell. But that could be the thing the Phillies need to really put them over the top, especially if they're not going to try and get a replacement for Kimbrel or someone else in the back end, because I don't completely trust the current setup. I like it and the potential, but it's a lot of this could work out great or it could backfire a lot if some young guys take a step back again, like Sir Anthony Dominguez or Gregory Soto.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of question marks for sure. I do think that in a way, I almost want to say I think the Phillies are not even playing for your division. Like they win it,
Yeah.
great for them, but I think they're playing the long game here. Of we don't need to win the division to win
Right.
the World Series.
No, I think the
So I
last two
definitely think
postseasons have perfectly showed that you don't need to win your division to make a play in the postseason. You just need to make it there.
Oh yeah.
And that's why the
Yeah.
Phillies can sort of be like, all right, we can slip into that wild card. As long as we have a good front end of our rotation, which is great in them solidifying Wheeler and Nola for the next 3 years at least. And then, of course, if they can keep Wheeler around, if he's still dominant, then that gets him at least through the first round, maybe even the second round, with feeling pretty good about their chances. It's just after that, that's where I'm not sure whether they're
I think the
completely
Phillies in
satisfied
your
with what they have.
division. I think the Phillies in your division are set up to be that top wild card in the
Mhm.
National League for a long time. If you don't win the division, I should say, because obviously the Braves are the Braves, but eventually they have to come back down, right?
That's what
but
Phillies fans are hoping for.
Well, one thing that
yeah,
might be good for the Braves is that given the current playoff situation and the odds that the Dodgers will have the best record in the National League and the Phillies will have the number one wild card spot, is that the Braves might get a break. And if the Phillies win the wild card round, they'll have to face the Dodgers this year in the division series. And boy, that will be a matchup.
I think this is.
well, not necessarily.
I think this is
In
perfect
Shut
theory.
up. You know
scenario.
nothing, Oriole fan.
I think this is perfect scenario though for the Phillies that Montgomery and Snell are still here because I agree. I think they need a third arm to really bolster themselves as a, you know, upper echelon contender, a top 5 contender. I think it's perfect that they're at this point because now they might be able to get away with signing these guys on a 1-year deal. You know, at this point in time. Let's quickly touch on Matt Chapman before we get on out of here. Matt Chapman signs with the Giants. Don't want to say that came out of nowhere, but a little bit interesting. He signs, what was it, 3 years, 54, I think it was. And look, Giants are building something. I think they have a lot of work to do, but they're slowly but surely building that infield. Matt Chapman, for a portion of last season, was like the best hitter in baseball. So we'll see how it works out. But I mean, again, a nice little cornerstone there for the Giants.
I definitely think that the Giants are trying to keep up with the Dodgers and trying to not necessarily keep up in terms of like talent, but try and be competitive with them. In terms of spending money, I should say, not keeping up on that front because the only people that can do that are in New York. But in terms of the Dodgers and the Giants, I mean, it's like I said at the last show. There's no one that the Giants hate being second fiddle to more than the Dodgers, and vice versa. So you know for a fact that the Giants are going to do everything in their power to be competitive as soon as possible. And honestly, this move, it's an okay move for them. It's the Giants are a big market team. They can afford this. They still have a lot of question marks. I think that when it comes down to it, the Giants are going to be an 85 win team, final wild card spot, that sort of thing, and it's just how it is.
The question, I think, is how many wins do you think your team needs to get a wild card spot? Right now, I'd say probably in the National League, that number is about 88 wins. At least it should be if everyone performs roughly how you think they might perform. The Giants are probably just shy of that right now. Yes, they've helped solidify a weak offense that did not have a lot of power the last couple of years in the Soler and Chapman signings. And of course, Chapman will give them great defense, but they still have a big hole in the starting rotation right now. So if they really want to show that they're competitive, then maybe they're the team that slips in last second and gets Snell on again a short-term 3-year deal like they did with Chapman, because then that
If they
might
get
send
Snell,
the
I
team
think
over
they
the
could
top.
get 90 wins.
I do think that
I have thoughts.
I mean, look, I think their pitching is what needs to be upgraded, and now the Giants are kind of rumored to maybe be getting into that conversation with Snell. I know Boris came out and said 4 more teams are interested, unknown teams. He didn't say it's coming from the player agent. Take it with a grain of salt. But it looks like there might be interest, and maybe the Giants are one of those destinations. But either way, for Matt Chapman, good deal. I mean, he's got options to get out of that after the first every year, right? So
Mhm.
I mean, yeah, it gives him some flexibility, gets him on a team this year, and again, one of the better hitters in baseball last season, and he goes to the Bay. So
Definitely in looking at Chapman, I mean, I find it interesting the fact that he didn't sign a 6-year deal, that 6-year deal with the Blue Jays.
yeah,
So that leaves a lot of question marks as to what, because he was offered 6 million, 6 years, 120 million. I almost said that in reverse. Oy. 6 million for 120 years.
Jesus.
Anyway,
Oy.
that's a
Unprecedented.
contract.
with that
Anyway.
all being said, we'll wrap it up here. Just wanted to hop on for a second and talk about some of the recent news. We will have a podcast coming up in a few days from now. We will be doing the NL and AL West season preview and predictions. Make sure you tune into that. You can follow us on Twitter. I'm not going to say X, it is Twitter at Big League Breakdowns. And our other socials are in the description as well. But thank you guys for watching, and we will see you next time.